Voters will get a couple of pounds of ballot material in their mailboxes in November, costing the city an extra $1 million. San Diego's finally building housing again, but not for the middle class. And Patricia Smith files suit against Hillary Clinton in San Diego federal court for the wrongful death of her son. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today are David Garrick, who covers San Diego City government for the Union Tribune. Hi, David.
Hi, Mark.
Good to see you back today. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John. Hi, Allison.
Good to be here, Mark.
Glad to have you here. And legal affairs reporter Dana Littlefield, also of the Union Tribune. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Mark.
Welcome back. Well, have you burned through that summer reading list already? Don't worry, San Diego residents can look forward to getting a 2-volume sample ballot in the mail soon. 2 initiatives to raise hotel taxes to help fund a convention center expansion and Charger Stadium downtown, and other things take nearly 200 pages to explain. But first, it looks like the city ballot will be a little less heavy in one place. That's the listing of candidates for council in District 1. That was, David, that was the only race we saw among the council districts that was, even a contest here, and now a candidate's dropped out today.
We have one other one in District 9. There's kind of a battle between two progressive Democrats, Ricardo Flores and Georgette Gomez. But
so
yes,
that'll be the last one now.
Yeah. But this was a key one because it could have, if Ray Ellis had won, it could have flipped the partisan balance on the council to Republicans 5-4. But because Barbara Bee did so well in June, it was fully expected she would win in November. So it was the Democrats are pretty confident they were going to maintain their majority, and today just sort of cemented that. One quirk is that he's still going to be on the ballot, so theoretically he could still win. But he suspended his campaign. He's not going to raise money, which means there will be no mailers, which means,
All right, and again, so it really does look like the big question we'd had, and we talked about it often on this show, was would the council flip, and suddenly, even though it's nominally nonpartisan, the Democrats control the agenda and the majority, and that's going to continue apparently.
And you're going to have a Republican mayor, and you're going to have a Democratic-controlled city council, and then we got a 50-50 race for city attorney.
Yeah. Well, why did Mr. Ellis drop out? His reasons?
I think his reasons were it was difficult to raise money after getting badly beaten in June, and key in June is that's typically Republicans do well in June because there's more Republican voters. So for her to get 48% of the vote, nearly the 50% needed to avoid a runoff in June, meant in November, when the electorate is more friendly to Democrats, how could she lose? So I think it was difficult for him to ask for money from people with a straight face, like, I got this, really?
Right.
And also I think the only way to win would have probably been to go really negative.
Right.
And I think Ray Ellis is a good guy. He's a community-minded guy. He's worried about his legacy. He doesn't want to kind of do the negative stuff he'd have to do and still probably end up losing anyway.
Yeah, it'd still be a futile thing. All right, well, let's shift gears now. We talked about this decision this week to print and mail these huge ballot initiatives, and it really is almost 200 pages that's coming to a mailbox near you. First of all, why did we decide to do this week? The City Council had a vote.
Right. Well, there was a proposal on the table to not have the 2 citizens initiative that are related to potential Charger Stadium and Convention Center.
We'll get into those details in a minute.
Exactly. But there's 2 citizens initiatives. There are 12 things on the ballot that are called ballot measures, right? So, but 2 of them they thought about taking not having the full text.
Because they're enormous.
In the sample. Enormous. 77 pages, 119 pages. A very complicated subject. I mean, if you're going to raise hotel taxes to build a football stadium, there's an enormous amount of details that go into such an agreement, right? And so 119 pages is probably about right, but for a land use deal like that. But for the average voter, that's quite a bit of verbiage to digest and try to understand.
It makes me wonder whether people will be quite so willing to sign those voter register, signing up the petitions when they see one of these and they think, wow, this is what we're letting ourselves in for.
That's a great point. Hopefully people at the Walmart parking lot, 2 years from now will say, how many pages is it going to be?
Before the rush. Well, and this is just the city. You've got the state, you've got county, all sorts of stuff coming. Now, in this day and age, the argument was made. Some council members said, they can just be posted online. Anybody who wants to read them, because as I said at the open, it's close to $1 million to send all this stuff by mail. We do have a bite actually from Todd Gloria, who heads the budget committee. He thought the money could have been spent elsewhere. Let's hear that. queued up right now, but basically, paraphrase what Gloria's
I think
argument
Todd's
is.
argument was this is the modern age. I mean, almost everyone has access to a computer. They were going to put copies of it at all 36 city library branches. It will be available at the city clerk's office. If you have the devotion that you're going to read the thing, I think you can walk to your local library branch. But I think you can walk to your local library branch or go online. Libraries have computers, even though not everyone has internet access in their home, most people do, and those who don't can go to a library.
Well, yeah, in this day and age, you have access to this. It's pretty hard to argue that you don't.
Right. But he was outvoted for it too, and the thought was, hey, this is a really important thing that could dramatically affect the city's future, and people should be able to read it. There should be no barrier to their access to it.
All right. Maybe heading off a lawsuit too. Who knows if they didn't do it? So.
And even though $1 million is a lot, and I wouldn't want to pretend that it isn't, the city's annual budget is $1.3 billion.
Right.
And so, I mean, $1 million is relatively not a lot in that context.
Well, as Gloria said, it could be a fire engine, could be summer youth program, other things. Well, let's break down these initiatives. We'll start with the Chargers. Though they're proposing this stadium/convention center, Convadium. How's it going to be funded? What are the voters being asked to decide?
Voters are being asked to raise the hotel tax significantly to be among the highest in the nation, to basically pay the lion's share of the cost for a convention center annex. It wouldn't be connected to the convention center that's on the waterfront.
Yeah, several blocks away.
Exactly, right? And then there would be a stadium combined with that, and that would be funded partly with money from that tax, and then partly by the NFL and the Chargers and seat licenses and the typical things that go into it.
All right, for the radio audience, I'll read a few high points here. It raises the city hotel taxes to 16.5%. Chargers contribute $650 million. City issues $1.15 billion in bonds. $350 to the stadium, $600 million to the convention center, $200 million for land, and the bonds are paid back by hotel tax revenue. That's a mouthful here.
Yes.
All right, now we've got this other initiative.
But compared to the second one, that's easy. Because the other one is known as a citizens plan. It's the one proposed by Corey Briggs,
attorney who's
local
been
attorney.
very involved, sued the city many times on
exactly,
issues.
Yeah, especially on convention center type issues.
Right.
And Corey tried to come up with a plan, as he has described to me, where everyone would have to do the right thing, but they would still get a good deal. The hotel industry, the Chargers, San Diego State, which wants to expand, and they'll have an opportunity to do that if the Chargers leave Mission Valley and move to downtown.
Into the Qualcomm site.
Exactly, right. So that was the goal that he tried to create. But unfortunately, when you try to create something like that, where you set up a bunch of different rules and mechanisms to try to keep everybody honest and fair, it's really, really complicated. And that's why it's 77 pages long, and it's not necessarily a land use document. The reason the Chargers is so long is it's a land use document. This isn't, and it's still 77 pages long. All
right, well, let's do the high points here for the radio folks. Sure. It raises the hotel taxes to 15.5%, requires voters to approve public funds for a downtown stadium, eliminates the tourism marketing district, prohibits waterfront expansion of the convention center, this is that annex you were talking about, and encourages university use of that Qualcomm site in Mission Valley. Now, the citizens plan put forth by Attorney Briggs, hasn't that been criticized as parts of it being unlawful by the city attorney, Jan Goldsmith?
The city attorney, Jan Goldsmith, ripped it to shreds and said there were several major concerns legally that he thought couldn't pass muster, and that would create litigation problems for the city for a long time. Briggs disagrees and says that it's in the clear. So, it seems like there's so many concerns raised by Goldsmith, it's hard to believe they could all be false, but maybe they are.
And one of the main ones is under state law, these citizen initiatives, they're really supposed to be lasered in on one topic. And as we've noted, this kind of is not.
Correct.
I mean, do we know how many people haven't made up their minds yet? I mean, I have a suspicion most people are pretty clear already and they don't think they need to read 200 pages to make up their mind. How many people could actually change their mind as a result of these 200 pages?
I have to tell you, when I see people around and I talk about this stuff, the percentage of people who even know that there are initiatives on the ballot regarding stadiums is maybe half the people.
Really?
You know what I mean? Some people, people know the Chargers are looking for a stadium, but the idea that there's going to be something on the ballot is not. By November, we'll probably get there as we get closer, as there's more and more news coverage. But I think a lot of people have not made up their minds because they don't even know what they're going to be making their minds up.
And there will be a synopsis, presumably, and arguments for and against, so you don't necessarily have to read the whole initiative.
Right, but that was a key difference between the Chargers' reaction to what Mark was talking about, the potential of shrinking and not including the full text of these. Right, the Chargers were like, we're fine with that. Briggs was concerned because he felt like, because of the city attorney's opinion saying his thing is illegal, that even though the city would write what was apparently a objective ballot statement, that maybe it would be biased in some way, just word choice here or there. So he expressed concerns about it. I don't know what role that played in the city deciding not to go that route, but he was concerned about it.
And the threshold of 2/3 majority is going to be very tough for either or both of these.
And as Briggs will point out, the city attorney says it's going to require 2/3. Briggs still insists that his only needs 50%.
All right. So. Smell a lawsuit. Okay, let's move on to another topic here. How tough is it to find a place to live here in San Diego? By one estimate, fewer than 3 in 10 residents can afford an average-priced home in San Diego. And stories of young families moving elsewhere because they can't afford to live in the place they grew up are common. Allison, we've heard about the housing crisis for a long time now. Is it worse than ever here?
Well, I think what really the focus of the story was that, affordable housing, people talk about it, and you assume that this is for people who are lower income and it's related to raising the minimum wage. But the fact of the matter is that the middle class now is finding it very hard to afford a house in San Diego. And what I discovered was that the construction industry is also finding it very hard to build homes for the middle class, because the affordable houses at the low end are subsidized by government subsidies, and construction companies or developers always would like to go, partly because of their investors, I think, for the high end so that they can make the maximum profit. So who is getting squeezed in this picture? It's the middle class again. And in fact, just a fraction of the houses that the middle class, the demand from the middle class needs, is being built in terms of new construction, whereas the top end of the market is getting 150% under some recent studies of what it needs. So there's an imbalance happening, and I think a lot of people are relating to this and saying, hey, what about us? Why can't you build something a little bit more affordable?
And what are some of the hurdles to that? I mean, to getting, hitting that niche, and it used to be the broadest niche.
Well, of course, the Building Industry Association says that there's studies that show that some people say 47% of the cost of new construction goes in meeting all the government permits and requirements. So they're arguing that it's not so much the profits that they're running off with, it's the public regulations that are costing, they're raising the price of houses. And of course, with private companies, it's a bit difficult to check that because you don't know what the profits are for many of these companies.
But theoretically, in a really expensive house, the percentage spent on regulation is it's a smaller portion because it's sort of a flat amount. So when in a lower price house, it's a bigger part of it and it's more glaring. Whereas if it's a $3 million house, the fact that you spend $100,000 on regulations, I mean, it's just relatively
They're going
less.
for the profits.
Yes.
I mean, that's undeniable. And of course, they would argue, well, we need to satisfy our investors, and investors will only give when they know there's going to be big profits. So it's the market. Yeah.
Do you think this might also be affecting the people looking for starter homes? I mean, I understand the idea that middle class, maybe you'd stay there forever, but also people who are just trying to move up. If there aren't starter homes, what do they do? They stay in a condo until they can afford a 6-bedroom mansion or something?
Well, I think what's interesting is that even although the building industry says that it did get enough permits to build 10,000 new units last year, very, very few of them, just a tiny sliver of them, were actually affordable, were actually under $1 million. So that does raise questions as to how is it possible to find a move-up home if you're a young family.
Well, what does that mean? How does that change the complexion of who lives here? I mean, there's all sorts of jobs that don't pay all that much, and granted, we're raising the minimum wage, but where are the workers going to come from? They're going to have to commute from 40 or 50 miles to come in and do lower jobs or entry-level jobs, or even jobs like a police officer and teacher that pay middle-class wages, but you can't find a house.
And even companies, I think, are now saying this is a major issue for San Diego's economy, because if they want to start a company, it's very hard. Even those of us in the media know that sometimes it's hard to bring in fresh talent because if you don't live here already, it's not going to be easy to be able to afford a home.
Well, another hard part based on Allison's story is that these families, they'll see their children grow and then get to their mid-20s and they're starting to have a family and they want to buy a house here. So these aren't people from out of the area and they can't afford to stay. They move to Phoenix or they move to Las Vegas because the housing is cheaper.
Yeah, you cited one example in your story. We do have a bite on this here. We've got Matt Adams, Vice President of the Building Industry Association, on what kind of housing units are being built here.
Out of the 10,000 that were produced last year, you had only 229 single-family homes were produced that could be sold at $500,000 or less. The market that is not being met or serviced is the market of working middle-class families.
So he's making that
Allison.
same point, yes. And you know, the building industry would claim that, you know, it's not our fault, it's just the incentives aren't there. There are some efforts going on in Sacramento right now with Governor Brown to pour $400 million into more affordable housing. But there are so many competing interest groups that even that measure is having trouble getting through, even although we know that this is really a crisis that needs to be addressed.
Well, one of the points in your story that kind of brought this into sharp relief was the city of Carlsbad here. And what's happened there recently regarding the construction of moderate income housing?
I cited Carlsbad, not that they're necessarily worse than others, although I think that some of the coastal cities in North County are in a particularly difficult situation where, you know, they're required by state law to have a housing element which says, yes, we will agree to build this number of homes of high income, medium income and low income homes, and in order to meet state law they have to have that plan. But what, you know, it looks good when you've got a plan, but what is actually happening is that they're building very few, very, very few of the low-income homes, hardly any of the middle-income homes. And again, the top-income homes probably have the lion's share of any new construction. And in fact, in the case of Carlsbad, they're way behind their goals. Which is not uncommon. Many cities are like that. And the city of Encinitas, for example, doesn't even have a housing element because they cannot agree on where to build homes. So, you know, the construction industry also has a valid point in saying, you know, we just cannot get a place to build our homes because some of the cities are blocking us. But on the other hand, I think it's true to say that some of the cities, even when there are homes being proposed that are higher density, are saying, no, we don't want that, even although they've committed to a certain number of homes.
Now, you wonder about, there's projections and how much we're going to need, and San Diegan says we're going to need this much in 10 years, 20 years, what have you and all. Doesn't the market, as we were talking earlier, start pricing people out to the point where maybe this growth isn't going to happen because it's just too darn expensive to live here unless the market adjusts?
Well, I mean, we saw that the price of a new home fell, I believe, in the last report just a couple of days ago, but the number of So you know, that's the number of homes that were being sold fell, but the price stayed the same. That's the point that I was trying to make, which suggests that we might be on that tipping point, you know, where the prices just are too high, so the number of homes that are changing hands is falling. So I think a lot of people are looking at this with a certain amount of caution. However, San Diego was so much less expensive than LA and San Francisco.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I happened to see this morning, Zillow, which of course tracks housing prices all over the place and all sorts of real estate aspects of the market, says the median priced home in Palo Alto, which of course is right near Silicon Valley and Stanford, $2.5 million. That's the median priced home. I mean, you've got to be a millionaire to live in that city. It's remarkable. At some point, do you think we're near that bubble again? I mean, a lot of us certainly remember where the market went down 40% in 08, 09, 2010.
Yeah, I mean, I am not in a position to predict that. But on the other hand, some of the comments that are on my story suggest that perhaps one of the reasons that house prices are remaining so high is because of investors from possibly other countries who are seeing the United States as an extremely stable investment compared to, say, China, and are pouring money into our housing market in the hopes that it will pay off for them. One doesn't know, but maybe that's where some of the money for the high-end housing is coming from.
Maybe they're buying at the top. Well, be fascinating to see as we move forward here. We're going to shift gears now. With less than 90 days to the election, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has been sued by the parents of two men killed in Benghazi, Libya in 2012. One of the plaintiffs is a San Diego woman whose son was killed in the infamous attack on the U.S. Embassy while working for the State Department. Dana, what's the basis of this federal lawsuit? What does it seek in damages, if anything?
Well, it is a wrongful death suit. So essentially these two parents, it's the mother of one of the victims of this attack and the father of another one of the victims of this attack. They are both suing, saying essentially that Hillary Clinton is at fault for those deaths. And there are also some other causes of action that are mentioned, such as defamation, as well as negligence. So essentially what is being said here is because of her, the email scandal that we've all heard so much about, that essentially they say, the plaintiffs in this suit say that she was reckless with confidential information, that because of that circumstance that they say she created, that led to these attacks, and therefore she's responsible.
All right, and that suit, according to your story, says the parents are claiming it's highly probable these Clinton emails about the covert info regarding the Benghazi facility and the personnel found their way to terrorists and foreign powers, but they don't really have any evidence of that, do they?
Well, that's true. I mean, essentially they're saying that because the situation existed where Hillary Clinton had her emails on this private email server, that it is highly probable that she shared information or she used that server to distribute information about the location of these Americans in Libya.
That could have been intercepted.
Right, that could have been intercepted. So there's nothing in the lawsuit that I read that says definitely, and as we know in all of the investigations that have taken place since Benghazi, there is nothing that says definitely this happened. But they're saying it not only it could have happened, but that it probably did happen.
Yeah, the Congress has looked into this a little bit. They've had
Well, yes.
8 hearings, 8 or 9 hours of Hillary Clinton herself being on the stand, and their conclusions were, as you say, no culpability here for the Democratic presidential candidate. Let's talk about the parents who are bringing the lawsuit. Patricia Smith, long been in the public eye, blaming Hillary Clinton for her son's death recently at the GOP convention here.
Yes.
And so she's, again, one of the parents of these 4 Americans who were killed.
Yes, and as you just stated, she's been very vocal about her ascribing the blame here for what happened to her son, Sean Smith. To Hillary Clinton, not only to Hillary Clinton, but to President Barack Obama as well. And so I guess the largest platform she had to convey that message was recently at the Republican National Convention. So she is continuing here with this lawsuit, saying that they are, well, Hillary Clinton specifically is at fault.
And 3 of the 4 victims in this Benghazi attack have connections to San Diego, which is interesting.
Yes. Sean Smith grew up here. And then you have Tyrone Woods. His father, Charles Woods, is one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And Tyrone Woods was an Imperial Beach resident. And then you had another person, Glenn Doherty, who had some connections to San Diego as well.
And it sounds like
Allison?
his mother is not blaming Hillary Clinton at all. I
That's
mean,
true.
That would be Glenn Doherty's mother.
Yes.
Yeah, you talked to her. Right?
Well, yes, I did talk to her. And while she didn't want to get into the politics that surround this issue or these issues, she did have, I guess you could say, some nice things to say about Hillary Clinton. She did say that she felt Clinton was a good Secretary of State. However, she did make some comments about, it's not as though the government is not at all responsible for what happened to her son. She believes that there are aides that were working underneath Clinton that, may hold some responsibility here, but she didn't go into a lot of detail.
Well, some people think these lawsuits are politically motivated. I mean, did you get that vibe? I mean, yeah. I mean, do you think there's Republican operatives encouraging people to file lawsuits, or is it not that extreme? Or
well, that brings up my next question because we should talk about Larry Klayman, who's the attorney who brought this suit. Tell us about him.
Well, Larry Klayman, yes, he is the attorney who filed this lawsuit. He's the founder of an organization called Freedom Watch, and that is what I described in the story as a conservative organization. And he has, for many years and decades, even, he has been highly critical of the Clintons. I don't think there's a lot of question here that, that there are politics involved in this lawsuit. But that said, Klayman, when I spoke to him, he was, adamant that this is a situation where, these parents are, they're hurting and they want answers for what happened to their children. And so he was very quick to say to me, he was very much leaning on the wording of the lawsuit. This is what I'm saying, this is what I mean, and this is about justice for those families.
Well, he's got more than a little baggage. He sued the Clintons 18 times. He sued his own mother. He sued Barack Obama. He stood outside the White House and insisted that he leave the country because he's not born here and he's an illegitimate president. So there is a little bit of political baggage there.
Just a bit.
He used to represent Clive Bundy when that whole the BLM land, yes. So we sort of know where he stands, yes.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some legal observers and people nationally who have weighed in on this lawsuit. Fox News, of all places, said the suit lacks merit and there's nothing more than a political stunt here. Have you seen some of that in your reporting?
I have seen some of that. And, and in the lawsuit itself, there is language in there that says, part of the one of the causes of action that is claimed in the suit is that there was some defamation here by Hillary Clinton against the two parents who are named as plaintiffs in this case. And it says specifically that her rhetoric involving those parents was ramped up or somehow, underscored, once this campaign got underway, her presidential campaign got underway. So you can't really, divide the two things, her what she did or did not do as Secretary of State and, what she is saying according to the plaintiffs in this suit now that she's running for president.
Okay. All right. Just a couple seconds left, and no chance this goes to trial if it ever gets to trial before the election, right?
Well, I hate to make those claims, but I think this one might have a hard road ahead.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, that does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, David Garrick of the Union Tribune, Allison St. John of KPBS News, and Dana Littlefield, also of the Union Tribune. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.